Hi, I'm Solenn, and after 3 years of grueling physical therapy and legal battles, I finally received my $847,000 accident settlement. But when my family found out, they cornered me at Sunday dinner and said Maya needed it more than I did. Maya, my younger sister, the golden child who could do no wrong. What they didn't know was that Maya was the drunk driver who hit me that rainy October night and left me bleeding on Highway 17. She fled the scene, never called for help, and watched me fight for my life while she built her perfect little world on lies. But I had been quietly collecting evidence, and when they pushed me to sign over my settlement, I decided it was time they learned the truth about their precious daughter. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The Arizona sun was already blazing at 7 in the morning when I pulled into the parking lot of Desert Springs Physical Therapy. Same spot every Tuesday and Thursday for the past 2 years, third row back where the mesquite trees provided just enough shade to keep my car from turning into an oven. My left leg still ached in the mornings, a dull throb that started in my hip and radiated down to my ankle like electricity through damaged wires. The doctor said it might always be that way, a permanent reminder of the night that split my life into before and after. I grabbed my water bottle and the small towel I always brought, locked the car, and limped toward the entrance. The automatic doors whooshed open, releasing a wave of air conditioning that felt like stepping into a refrigerator. After being outside, Janet, the receptionist, looked up from her computer screen and smiled that practice smile she gave everyone. "Morning, Solenn. Dr. Martinez is running about 10 minutes behind today." "No problem," I replied, settling into one of the burgundy chairs in the waiting area. The magazine selection was the same as always, outdated issues of Better Homes and Gardens, and some health magazines with headlines about miracle diets and exercises that promise to change your life in 30 days. I'd read them all at least twice during my countless appointments here. My phone buzzed in my purse. A text from my mother, Linda. "Don't forget dinner Sunday at 6. Maya's bringing someone special." 3 exclamation points. Mom always used excessive punctuation when she was excited about something involving Maya. I typed back a simple, "I'll be there," and slipped the phone back into my bag. The thing about recovery that nobody tells you is how lonely it gets. Not just the physical isolation during those first few months when I couldn't drive or walk without crutches, but the emotional distance that grows between you and everyone else. They all moved on with their lives while mine got stuck in a loop of doctor appointments, insurance calls, and pain management. Friends stopped inviting me places because I couldn't keep up. Coworkers sent sympathy cards and then forgot I existed. Even my family, well, they tried at first, but sympathy has an expiration date. "Solenn Rodriguez?" a voice called from the hallway. Marcus, one of the physical therapists, stood waiting with a clipboard. He was young, maybe 25, with the kind of enthusiasm that made you wonder if he'd ever experienced real disappointment. "Ready for some fun today?" he asked as we walked toward the exercise room. The question was rhetorical. Nothing about physical therapy qualified as fun, but Marcus maintained his cheerful demeanor like it was part of his job description. The next hour was the usual routine. Stretches that made my muscles scream. Exercises designed to retrain my body to move the way it used to. Balance work that reminded me how much I'd lost. I pushed through each movement, counting repetitions like a meditation, trying not to think about how this same routine would probably continue for months or maybe years to come. "You're making real progress," Marcus said as I finished the last set of leg raises. "Your range of motion has improved significantly since January." I nodded and wiped sweat from my forehead. Progress felt relative when you were measuring it against a baseline of barely being able to walk. But I'd learned to accept these small victories, to find meaning in incremental improvements that most people would never notice. After therapy, I drove to the law offices of Henderson, Clark & Associates in Tempe. The building was one of those modern glass structures that reflected the desert landscape, making it look like it was trying to disappear into the mountains. I'd been here so many times over the past 2 years that the security guard knew me by name. "Afternoon, Miss Rodriguez. Mr. Henderson is expecting you." The elevator ride to the 15th floor was smooth and silent. I'd grown to appreciate these moments of quiet, the brief spaces between conversations where I didn't have to explain or justify or relive anything. The doors opened to a reception area decorated in muted blues and grays, designed to be calming and professional. "Solenn!" James Henderson's voice boomed from his office doorway. He was a big man in his 50s with silver hair and the kind of confidence that comes from winning more cases than you lose. Come in. Do you want coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thanks." I settled into the leather chair across from his desk, the same chair where I'd sat through countless meetings about depositions and settlement negotiations and insurance company tactics designed to minimize payouts. James opened a thick manila folder and spread several documents across his desk. "I have good news. Excellent news, actually. The insurance company has agreed to our final settlement demand." He slid a document across the desk toward me. The number at the bottom made my breath catch. $847,000. After attorney fees and medical liens, I'd walk away with just over $600,000. It was more money than I'd ever imagined having. Enough to pay off my medical bills and maybe buy a small house. Enough to create some security in a life that had been anything but secure. "This is real?" I asked, staring at the number. "Very real." "The check should be ready within 2 weeks. You've earned this, Solenn, every penny of it." I thought about the night it all started, October 15th, 2 years and 8 months ago. I'd been driving home from my friend Rachel's birthday party, taking Highway 17 north toward Flagstaff, where I was living at the time. It was raining. Not heavy, but enough to make the roads slick and treacherous. I wasn't speeding, wasn't on my phone, wasn't doing anything except trying to get home safely. The other car came out of nowhere, running a red light at the intersection near the Carefree highway exit. I remember the headlights in my peripheral vision, remember thinking, "This is going to hurt." And then nothing until I woke up in Phoenix General 3 days later, with a shattered pelvis, 2 broken ribs, and a traumatic brain injury that left me with memory gaps and headaches that still came and went like unwelcome visitors. What I remembered most clearly was lying on the wet asphalt, unable to move, watching taillights disappear into the darkness. The other driver never stopped, never called for help, never came forward. It was a hit and run, pure and simple, and, despite the police investigation and the insurance company's efforts, they never found who did it. "There is one thing," James said, pulling me back to the present. "The insurance company wants a final statement, just confirming the details of the accident for their records, standard procedure." I nodded, though something about his tone made me pay attention. "What kind of statement?" "Just the basics." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Date, time, location, what you remember about the other vehicle. They're particularly interested in any details about the car that hit you. Color, make, model, anything that might help them identify the driver for their own investigation. A chill ran down my spine, though I couldn't explain why. I've told them everything I remember, multiple times. I know. But now that the settlement is finalized, they want everything on record. Don't worry about it too much. We'll schedule it for next week. I left the law office with a mixture of relief and anxiety churning in my stomach. The settlement was life-changing money, enough to give me independence and security I'd never had before. But something about that final statement request bothered me, like a splinter under the skin that you can't quite reach. The drive back to my apartment in downtown Phoenix took 45 minutes in afternoon traffic. I lived in a converted warehouse, district that had become trendy in recent years. filled with young professionals and artists who couldn't afford Scottsdale but wanted something more interesting than the suburbs. My place was small, a studio with exposed brick walls and industrial fixtures, but it was mine, and the rent was manageable on my disability payments. I climbed the 2 flights of stairs slowly, my leg protesting with each step. The hallway smelled like someone was cooking curry, probably Mrs. Chen from apartment 3B, who always smiled at me in the elevator, but never said much beyond good morning in accented English. Inside my apartment, I dropped my purse on the kitchen counter and opened the refrigerator looking for something to eat. The shelves were mostly empty, except for yogurt, leftover Chinese takeout, and a wilted head of lettuce I kept meaning to throw away. I'd never been much of a cook before the accident, and the months of recovery hadn't inspired any culinary ambitions. My phone rang while I was heating up leftover pad thai in the microwave. Maya's name appeared on the screen, along with a photo of her from last Christmas, all perfect teeth and highlighted hair. "Solenn, Mom told me about Sunday dinner. I'm so excited for you to meet Derek." Derek, the special someone she was bringing. Maya had been dating him for about 6 months, according to the updates I received through family conversations. He was some kind of financial advisor who drove a BMW and took her to expensive restaurants in Scottsdale. "Looking forward to it," I said, though enthusiasm wasn't something I could muster on demand anymore. "How are you feeling? Mom said you had physical therapy today." "I'm fine, getting stronger." The same response I gave everyone who asked. It was easier than explaining that some days I felt like my old self, and other days I felt like a stranger living in a broken body. "That's great. I've been meaning to call you more often. Work has been so crazy, and Derek and I have been traveling a lot. Did I tell you about our trip to Sedona last weekend?" She hadn't, but she proceeded to give me a detailed account of their romantic getaway, complete with descriptions of the spa treatments and the sunset dinner at a restaurant I couldn't afford, even with my settlement money. Maya had always lived in a different world than me, even before the accident. She was 3 years younger but had somehow landed a job in marketing that paid twice what I'd made as a social worker. She drove a new car, lived in a trendy apartment, and seemed to attract the kind of men who looked like they stepped out of cologne advertisements. "Anyway," she said, wrapping up her Sedona story, "I should let you rest. See you Sunday." After she hung up, I sat on my couch staring out the window at the city lights beginning to twinkle in the dusk. Phoenix at sunset was beautiful in its own harsh way, all desert colors and urban sprawl stretching toward mountains that looked purple in the fading light. I'd grown up here, lived here most of my life, except for the 3 years I'd spent in Flagstaff working for the county social services department. That job felt like a lifetime ago now, back when I thought I was going to save the world one case at a time. The accident had ended that career. Not immediately, but gradually, as the cognitive effects of my brain injury made it harder to focus for long periods, harder to manage the emotional weight of other people's problems when I was barely managing my own. I'd tried to go back after 6 months of recovery, but lasted only 3 weeks before admitting defeat. I opened my laptop and navigated to my bank account, looking at the balance that would soon be transformed by the settlement money. It felt surreal, like looking at someone else's life. Financial security had never been something I took for granted, and the idea of having enough money to buy a house or go back to school felt almost impossible to comprehend. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from my mother. "Can you bring dessert Sunday? Maya's Derek has a sweet tooth." More exclamation points. I typed back that I'd pick something up from the bakery and set the phone aside. The weekend passed quietly. Saturday I spent cleaning my apartment and doing laundry, mundane tasks that had become almost meditative in their routine. Sunday morning, I drove to a bakery in Scottsdale that made elaborate cakes and spent more than I probably should have on something called a chocolate bourbon torte that looked impressive enough to make a good impression on Maya's boyfriend. My parents lived in a subdivision that had been built in the 80s, when Phoenix was still expanding rapidly, and developers were turning desert into neighborhoods as fast as they could pour concrete. The houses all looked similar, stucco and tile roofs in various shades of beige and brown, with small front yards featuring rock gardens and the occasional palm tree. I parked behind Maya's white Lexus SUV in the driveway and grabbed the cake box from my passenger seat. The front door opened before I could knock, and my mother appeared wearing the kind of smile she reserved for special occasions. Solenn, perfect timing. Maya and Derek just got here. The house smelled like roast beef and the vanilla candles Mom lit whenever we had company. I followed her into the living room where Maya sat curled against a tall man with dark hair and an expensive-looking watch. This had to be Derek. He stood when he saw me, extending his hand with the kind of firm grip that suggested he'd practiced it. "You must be Solenn. Maya's told me so much about you." "All good things, I hope," I replied, wondering what exactly Maya had shared about her accident-prone older sister. My father emerged from the kitchen carrying a beer and wearing the polo shirt my mother had probably picked out for him. "There's my girl. How are you feeling?" "Good, Dad. Getting stronger every day." We settled into the familiar rhythm of family dinner conversation. Derek talked about his work in financial planning, mentioning clients and investment strategies, with the casual confidence of someone who'd never worried about money. Maya hung on his every word, playing the role of the adoring girlfriend with an enthusiasm that seemed slightly performative. "Derek's been helping me with my finances," Maya said during a lull in conversation. "I never realized how much money I was wasting on little things." "It's all about creating long-term wealth," Derek said, cutting into his roast beef. "Most people think short-term, but real financial success comes from strategic planning and smart investments." I nodded politely, though something about his tone rubbed me the wrong way. Maybe it was the way he spoke, like he was giving a seminar. Or maybe it was just that I'd never trusted people who talked about money with such casual authority. "Speaking of finances," my mother said, setting down her fork and looking at me with the expression she used when she was about to say something important. "Maya told us about your settlement." The room went quiet. I felt Derek's eyes on me, suddenly more interested than he'd been all evening. "James called with the final number on Friday," I said carefully. "It's more than I expected." "That's wonderful, honey," Dad said. "You deserve every penny after what you've been through." Maya reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I'm so happy for you, Solenn. Finally, some good news." But there was something in her voice, a note I couldn't quite identify. Not jealousy exactly, but something close to it. $800,000, Mom said, shaking her head. "I can't even imagine having that much money," I corrected her quietly. "After attorney fees and medical bills, it's closer to $600,000. "Still," Derek said, leaning forward with interest, "that's a significant sum. Have you thought about investment strategies? With the right portfolio, you could turn that into serious long-term wealth." "I'm just focused on getting my life back." "On track?" I said. "Maybe buying a small house, something stable." "Houses are good," Derek nodded. "But you don't want all your eggs in one basket. Diversification is key." The conversation continued through dessert, with Derek offering unsolicited financial advice and Maya agreeing with everything he said. I found myself watching them carefully, noting the way she deferred to his opinions and how he seemed to enjoy being seen as the expert in the room. After dinner, while Mom and Dad were cleaning up in the kitchen, Maya pulled me aside in the living room. "Can we talk for a minute?" she asked, glancing toward the kitchen to make sure our parents couldn't hear. "About your settlement?" I sat down on the couch, suddenly wary. "What about it?" Maya perched on the edge of the coffee table, facing me. She was wearing a sundress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, her hair styled in the kind of effortless waves that required expensive salon treatments. I know this might sound crazy, she began, but Derek and I have been talking, and we have this amazing opportunity. Here it comes, I thought. He has this client who's developing luxury condos in Scottsdale, right near the Four Seasons. It's a guaranteed return, Solenn. Guaranteed. 15% annually for the next 5 years. I stared at her. You want me to invest my settlement money in some real estate deal? Not all of it, she said quickly. Just part of it. Maybe half? Derek says with that kind of return, you'd double your money in less than 5 years. Maya, I need that money for medical expenses, for a house, for basic security. But this would give you so much more security. Think about it, Solenn. You could be financially independent for life. There was something desperate in her voice that I'd never heard before. Maya had always been the golden child, the one who seemed to have everything figured out. But sitting there in our parents' living room, she looked almost panicked. Why is this so important to you? I asked. She looked away, fidgeting with her bracelet. It's not just for me. Derek thinks this could be good for both of us. For the whole family, really. How exactly would my money help the whole family? Well, she said, still not meeting my eyes. Derek and I were thinking about getting married, maybe next year. And his business is growing so fast, but he needs capital to expand. If you invested with him, it would be like keeping it in the family. Now I understood. This wasn't about helping me build wealth. This was about Maya and her boyfriend needing money for something, and my settlement represented an opportunity they couldn't resist. I don't think so, Maya. Her face fell. Just think about it, okay? Don't decide right now. Talk to Derek more about it. He can explain all the details. I've already decided. That money is my safety net. I'm not gambling it on some investment. Comes? It's not gambling, she said, her voice rising slightly. It's a guaranteed return. Nothing is guaranteed, Maya, especially not 15% annual returns. She stood up abruptly, smoothing her dress. Fine. But you're making a mistake. This kind of opportunity doesn't come along often. The rest of the evening was awkward. Derek kept bringing up investment opportunities, and Maya kept giving me meaningful looks across the room. My parents seemed oblivious to the tension, talking about their plans to renovate the guest bathroom and asking Derek about his family. I left earlier than usual, claiming fatigue from physical therapy. In the driveway, Maya followed me to my car. Solenn, wait. I turned to face her. In the porch light, she looked younger than her 28 years, almost vulnerable. I didn't want to say this in front of everyone, she said, but Derek's in some financial trouble. Not big trouble, just a cash flow issue with his business. If we don't find investors soon, he might have to shut down. Maya, that's not my problem. He's a good guy, Solenn. I really think I'm going to marry him, and if his business fails, it'll ruin everything. I looked at my little sister, standing in the driveway in her expensive dress and designer heels, asking me to risk my future on her boyfriend's business problems. For a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. I can't help you with this, I said, softly. I'm sorry. Her expression hardened. You know what? Fine. Keep your money. Buy your little house and live your safe little life. But don't come crying to me when you're old and broke and wish you'd taken a chance when you had one. She turned and walked back toward the house, leaving me standing alone by my car, wondering what had just happened to my family. The phone. Calls started the next morning. First my mother, then my father, then Maya again. All of them with the same message delivered in slightly different ways. I needed to reconsider. I was being selfish. Family came first. Derek was such a nice young man with such promising opportunities. Didn't I want Maya to be happy? I let most of the calls go to voicemail, but when my mother called for the third time before noon, I finally answered. Solenn, honey, Maya's been crying all morning. She says you were really harsh with her last night. I was sitting in my apartment, laptop open to a real estate website where I'd been looking at small houses in quiet neighborhoods. Normal houses. For normal people who wanted normal lives. The settlement money could buy me that normalcy, that peace I'd been craving since the accident turned everything upside down. I wasn't harsh, Mom. I just told her I couldn't invest my settlement money in Derek's business. But it sounds like such a wonderful opportunity. Your father and I talked about it, and we think maybe you should at least consider it. You know, Maya has always been so good with money. Had she? I tried to remember instances of Maya's financial wisdom and came up empty. She'd never worked while she was in college, never had to worry about student loans because our parents paid for everything. Her first job out of school came through a family friend's connection. Even her apartment was partially subsidized by monthly checks from Dad when she came up short on rent. Mom, this is my decision to make. Of course it is, sweetheart. But family means we help each other. When your grandfather left me that money years ago, I used it to help pay for Maya's college. Family shares. That's what we do. The guilt was thick in her voice, the kind of emotional manipulation that had been woven into our family dynamics for as long as I could remember. Maya was the baby, the one who needed protecting and supporting and helping through every challenge. I was the responsible one, the one who was supposed to understand and sacrifice and put everyone else's needs first. I have to go, Mom. I have a doctor's appointment. I didn't have a doctor's appointment, but I needed to end the conversation before I said something I'd regret. I set the phone aside and stared at the house listings on my screen. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, small backyard, with a covered patio. Listed at $400,000, which would leave me enough for furniture and emergency funds. It looked peaceful. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Can we have coffee today? I want to apologize for last night. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a cafe in Scottsdale, one of those trendy places with exposed Edison bulbs and reclaimed wood furniture where everything cost twice what it should. Maya was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table wearing oversized sunglasses despite being indoors. Thank you for coming, she said as I sat down. She'd ordered me a latte, which sat cooling in front of the empty chair. I was up all night thinking about our conversation. Maya, if this is about the investment thing again, it's not. Well, not entirely. She pulled off her sunglasses, and I could see that she had been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy, her usually perfect makeup slightly smudged. I need to tell you something about Derek. I waited, sipping the latte she'd ordered. It was too sweet, loaded with vanilla syrup and whipped cream. He's not just having cash flow problems. He owes money to some people. Bad people. The kind who don't just send threatening letters when you can't pay. A chill ran through me. What kind of money are we talking about? $200,000. Her voice was barely above a whisper. He borrowed it to invest in cryptocurrency last year, thinking he could double it quickly and pay it back. But the market crashed, and now these people want their money back plus interest. Maya, you're dating someone who owes money to loan sharks? They're not loan sharks exactly, more like private investors. But they're getting impatient, and Derek is scared. Really scared. I leaned back in my chair, processing this information. And you think my settlement money is the solution to his problem? It would be enough to pay them back and still have money left over for legitimate investments. Derek really does have good business opportunities, Solenn. He just made one mistake. One mistake that put him in debt to dangerous people. People who might hurt him if he doesn't pay up soon? There it was. The real story behind the investment opportunity. Derek wasn't looking to help me build wealth. He was looking for a way out of a dangerous situation, and Maya was willing to sacrifice my financial security to save him. I can't help you with this, Maya. Her face crumpled. But you're my sister. If something happens to Derek, I don't know what I'll do. then maybe you should reconsider whether he's the right person for you. I love him, Solenn, and he loves me. We can get through this if we just have the money to make it right. I looked at my little sister across the table, remembering the girl who used to climb into my bed during thunderstorms, who'd come to me for help with homework and boy problems and college applications. When had she become someone who would ask me to risk everything for a man I'd met once? I'm sorry, but the answer is still no. She put her sunglasses back on and stood up abruptly. Fine. But when Derek gets hurt, or worse, that's on you. I hope you can live with that. She left me sitting alone at the table with 2 half-empty coffee cups and a growing sense that this was just the beginning. The rest of the week passed in an uneasy quiet. No more phone calls from family, no more texts from Maya. I tried to convince myself that they'd accepted my decision and moved on, but something felt wrong. The silence was too complete, too sudden after days of constant pressure. On Friday, I had my appointment with James Henderson to give the final statement to the insurance company. The law office felt different somehow. The usually bustling reception area strangely quiet. Even James seemed subdued when I arrived. "How are you feeling about everything?" he asked as we settled into his office. "Good. Ready to close this chapter and move forward." He nodded, but something in his expression made me pay attention. "Before we start with the insurance representative, I wanted to ask you something. Have you had any contact with your family? This week? Anyone asking questions about the case details?" "What kind of questions?" "Anything about the timeline of the accident, the police report, witness statements, details that wouldn't normally come up in casual conversation." A memory flickered. Maya asking about my doctor's appointments, wondering if I remembered more about the accident now that time had passed. At the time, it had seemed like sisterly concern. Now it felt like something else. "Why are you asking?" James leaned forward, his expression serious. "Someone called this office on Tuesday claiming to be your sister. They wanted information about the case file, said you'd asked them to pick up some documents. When my assistant asked for verification, they hung up." My stomach dropped. What kind of information were they asking for? Specifically, they wanted to know if we had identified the other driver, if there had been any new developments in that part of the investigation. The room felt suddenly cold. "And what did your assistant tell them?" "Nothing. We don't discuss case details with anyone but the client, but it made me curious about why someone would be asking those specific questions." Before I could respond, there was a knock on the door. James's assistant appeared with a man in his 40s wearing a rumpled suit and carrying a small recording device. "This is Detective Torres from the Insurance Fraud Division," James explained, as the man settled into the chair next to mine. "He'll be conducting the final interview." Detective Torres was nothing like I'd expected. He had kind eyes and a gentle manner, more like a counselor than an investigator. He explained that this was routine, just a way to make sure all the details were on record before the settlement was finalized. "I know you've been through this many times," he said, "but I'd like you to walk me through the night of the accident, one more time. Take your time, include any details you remember, no matter how small." I told him about leaving Rachel's party, about the rain making the road slick, about driving carefully because visibility was poor. I described the moment of impact, the realization that I was hurt, lying on the wet asphalt waiting for help that seemed to take forever to arrive. "You mentioned seeing the other car's taillights as it left the scene," Detective Torres said. "Can you describe what you remember about the vehicle?" "It was dark, so I couldn't see much. But the taillights were distinctive, not round like most cars, more rectangular. And there was something else." I paused, trying to access memories that felt fragmented. A sound, before the impact, like music playing loudly. What kind of music? Pop music, something current. I remember thinking it was strange that someone would be driving with music that loud in the rain. Detective Torres made a note. Anything else about the vehicle? Color, size, make, or model? It seemed big, like an SUV or a large sedan. Light. Colored, maybe white or silver. And it was new. I remember thinking that because the paint looked glossy under the streetlights. You mentioned the driver never stopped to check on you or call for help. No. The car just kept going. I was conscious the whole time until the ambulance arrived, and I never saw anyone come back to help. Detective Torres looked at his notes for a moment, then met my eyes. Miss Rodriguez, I have to ask you something that might seem unusual. Have you had any reason to suspect that you might know the person who hit you? The question hit me like a physical blow. What do you mean? Sometimes in hit-and-run cases, especially when there's a significant settlement involved, we find that the perpetrator was someone known to the victim. Family member, friend, co-worker, someone who had reasons beyond just panic for leaving. The scene. My mind raced back to that night, trying to remember details I'd never considered important before. Who had known I was at Rachel's party? Who would have known what route I'd take home? Who owned a light-colored SUV with rectangular taillights? I don't know, I said slowly. I never thought about it that way. It's probably nothing, Detective Torres said, but his tone suggested he thought it might be something. But if anything comes to mind, any connections you hadn't considered before, please call me immediately. He handed me his business card and gathered his recording equipment. After he left, James and I sat in silence for a moment. What was that about? I asked. I'm not sure, but insurance companies don't usually send fraud investigators for routine settlements unless they suspect something unusual. I left the law office with more questions than answers and a growing unease that I couldn't shake. The settlement check would be ready on Monday, but instead of feeling relieved, I felt like I was walking toward the edge of a cliff I couldn't see. That evening, I sat in my apartment trying to piece together fragments of memory and suspicion. I pulled out my laptop and opened a search engine, typing in white Lexus SUV rectangular taillights. The results showed several models from recent years, but one stood out. The current generation Lexus GX, available in white, with distinctive rectangular LED taillights. Maya drove a white Lexus SUV. I pushed the thought away immediately. It was impossible. Maya would never hurt me, would never leave me bleeding on the side of the road. We might have our differences, but she was my sister. She loved me. But then I remembered her behavior lately. The desperate need for money. The strange questions about my medical condition and memories. The phone call to James's office asking about case details. I opened a new browser tab and searched for Maya's social media accounts. Her Instagram was public, filled with photos of her perfect life with Derek. I scrolled back to October of 2 years ago, looking for posts from around the time of my accident. October 10th. Photo of Maya and Derek at a wine tasting in Scottsdale. October 12th. Picture of her new manicure with the caption, "Treating myself before a big weekend." October 14th. No posts. October 15th. The day of my accident. No posts. October 16th. A photo of her car, the white Lexus, with the caption, "So grateful for my baby getting me home safe last night." My hands started shaking. I screenshot the post and stared at it. Getting me home safe last night. The night I was lying in a hospital bed fighting for my life. I scrolled further back, looking for more clues. There were dozens of photos of the Lexus, Maya's pride and joy that she'd bought 6 months before my accident. In some of the pictures, I could see the distinctive rectangular taillights that had haunted my dreams. But this was still just circumstantial. Lots of people drove white Lexus SUVs. The timing could be coincidental. I was letting Detective Torres's questions plant seeds of paranoia that weren't based in reality. Then I found it. A post from October 13th, the day before my accident. Maya and Derek at a bar in Flagstaff, just 20 miles from where I was hit. The caption read, "Surprise weekend getaway. Derek knows all the best spots up north." Flagstaff. The same area where I'd been driving home from Rachel's party. The same route Maya would have taken if she'd been drinking in Flagstaff and driving back to Phoenix. I called Detective Torres immediately. "Miss Rodriguez, is everything all right?" "I think I know who hit me." There was a pause. "Can you come to the station tomorrow morning and bring whatever evidence you've found?" I spent the night wide awake, staring at the ceiling and trying to process the possibility that my own sister had nearly killed me, and then spent the last 3 years lying about it. By morning, I'd made a decision. I was going to find out the truth, no matter how much it hurt. The police station was a modern building in downtown Phoenix, all glass and steel that seemed designed to intimidate. Detective Torres met me in the lobby and led me to a small conference room with fluorescent lighting that made everything look harsh and artificial. "Tell me what you found," he said, as I spread printouts of Maya's social media posts across the table. I walked him through the timeline. Maya and Derek in Flagstaff the night before my accident. Maya's post about her car getting her home safe the night I was hit. The distinctive taillights. The fact that she'd been asking questions about the case. "This is compelling circumstantial evidence," Detective Torres said, "but it's not enough. For charges, we'd need physical evidence. Damage to her vehicle, witnesses, something concrete. What if she had the car repaired after the accident? Then we'd need repair records, insurance claims, something that connects her vehicle to your accident specifically." I thought about Maya's behavior over the past few years, how she'd visited me in the hospital but seemed uncomfortable, always staying for short periods and avoiding discussions about the accident, how she'd changed the subject whenever I mentioned the hit-and-run driver, how she'd suddenly become interested in my financial situation right around the time the settlement was finalized. "There's something else," I said. "She's been pressuring me to give her money from my settlement. A lot of money. Her boyfriend apparently owes money to dangerous people." Detective Torres leaned forward. "How much money?" "She wants me to invest $300,000 in her boyfriend's business. She says it's a guaranteed return. But I think they just need the money to pay off his debts." "Debts to who?" She wouldn't say exactly, just called them private investors who don't like waiting for payments. Detective Torres made notes while I talked. "Miss Rodriguez, I'm going to be frank with you. If your sister did hit you that night and has been covering it up, pressuring you for settlement money could be seen as an attempt to benefit financially from her own crime. That would make this case much more serious." The weight of what he was saying hit me. Maya hadn't just potentially tried to kill me and fled the scene. She was now trying to steal the money I'd received because of the injuries she'd caused. What do I do now? "We need to build a case. That means gathering evidence carefully and legally. Are you willing to help us?" I thought about Maya crying in the coffee shop, begging me to help save Derek from dangerous people. I thought about my mother's guilt trips and my father's disappointment. I thought about the family I'd grown up believing would always protect me. "Yes," I said. "I'll help you." Detective Torres explained what would happen next. They'd start by subpoenaing Maya's insurance records and any repair receipts for her Lexus around the time of the accident. They'd also look into Derek's financial situation and try to identify the people he owed money to. "In the meantime," he said, "I need you to act normal. Don't let on that you suspect anything. If your sister is guilty, we don't want her destroying evidence or fleeing. What about the settlement money? Don't give her any of it. Make excuses, delay, whatever you have to do. But don't turn over any money until we know what we're dealing with." I left the police station feeling like I was living in someone else's life. The sister I'd grown up loving and protecting might have tried to kill me. The family I'd always trusted might be trying to manipulate me into giving up my only chance at financial security. Nothing felt real anymore. My phone buzzed as I walked to my car. A text from Maya. "Family dinner Sunday at Mom and Dad's. Derek will be there. Please come. We need to talk. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back a simple, I'll be there. But this time I'd be going with questions instead of answers. And this time, I'd be listening for lies instead of accepting everything at face value. Sunday dinner was about to become very interesting. Sunday arrived with the kind of oppressive heat that made Phoenix feel like the surface of another planet. I spent the morning in my apartment, pacing between the kitchen and living room while trying to prepare myself mentally for what might be the most important family dinner of my life. Detective Torres had called the night before to tell me they'd found something interesting in Maya's insurance records, but he wouldn't give me details over the phone. The drive to my parents' house felt longer than usual, every red light an opportunity for my mind to spiral through worst-case scenarios. What if Maya suspected I knew something? What if she confronted me directly? What if I couldn't keep up the pretense of normalcy that Detective Torres had insisted was crucial? I pulled into the familiar driveway behind Maya's white Lexus and sat for a moment, studying the vehicle that might have been the weapon used against me. In the bright afternoon sun, I could see a small scrape along the front bumper that I'd never noticed before. My heart started racing. Was that damage from hitting me, or just normal wear and tear from city driving? The front door opened before I could get out of my car. Maya stood in the doorway wearing a flowing yellow sundress that made her look innocent and carefree. She waved enthusiastically, the same gesture she'd been making since we were children whenever I came to visit. Solenn, perfect timing. Mom just pulled the roast out of the oven. I grabbed the bottle of wine I'd brought and walked toward the house, trying to read Maya's expression for any signs of guilt or suspicion. She seemed genuinely happy to see me, which made everything more confusing. How could someone who'd potentially tried to kill me act so normal? Inside, the familiar sounds and smells of Sunday dinner filled the air. Mom bustling around the kitchen. Dad watching sports on the television with the volume turned up too loud. Derek sitting at the dining room table scrolling through his phone with the casual entitlement of someone who belonged here. Solenn. Mom appeared from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a dish towel. I'm so glad you came. I was worried after last week that you might not want to join us for a while. Why would you think that? She glanced toward Maya, who was now sitting next to Derek, whispering something in his ear. Well, you seemed upset about the investment opportunity Derek mentioned. I just wanted to make sure there were no hard feelings. No hard feelings. As if I'd turned down a timeshare presentation, instead of refusing to hand over my life savings to cover her daughter's boyfriend's gambling debts. No hard feelings, Mom. Dad emerged from the living room during a commercial break, beer in hand and wearing the relaxed expression he always had on Sundays. There's my successful daughter. How does it feel to be financially independent? It feels surreal, I said honestly. I'm still processing it. Well, you've earned it, he said, patting my shoulder. After everything you've been through, you deserve some good luck. Derek looked up from his phone. Actually, Mr. Rodriguez, I've been thinking more about what we discussed last week, about diversification and investment strategies for Solenn's settlement. Here we go, I thought. I did some research, Derek continued, and I found an even better opportunity than the one I mentioned before. Lower risk, higher guaranteed returns. I think Solenn would be crazy not to consider it. Maya beamed at him like he'd just announced a cure for cancer. Derek's been working so hard to find the perfect investment for you, Solenn. He really cares about your future. I forced a smile. That's very thoughtful, but I've already decided what I'm going to do with the money. The room went quiet. Mom stopped arranging place settings. Dad lowered his beer. Maya's smile faltered. Oh? Derek's voice carried a note of challenge. What's your plan? I'm buying a house. Something small and manageable. The rest goes into savings and conservative investments that I'll manage myself. That's so boring, Maya said with a laugh that sounded forced. You could do so much more with that money. Think about it, Solenn. With the right investments, you could double or triple your settlement in just a few years. Or I could lose it all. Not with Derek's connections, Mom chimed in. He's been so successful with his own investments. I looked at Derek, sitting there in his expensive clothes and designer watch, projecting an image of success while apparently owing hundreds of thousands of dollars to dangerous people. What kind of returns are you getting on your own portfolio, Derek? Something flickered across his face, too quick to interpret. Well, you know how the market's been lately. Volatile. But my clients have been very happy with their results. What specific returns are your clients seeing? It depends on their risk tolerance and investment timeline, but I'd be happy to show you some case studies. He was deflecting, answering my questions without actually answering them. I'd learned to recognize this technique from years of interviewing clients in social work, people who wanted to avoid admitting uncomfortable truths. Maybe we should eat before the food gets cold, Mom suggested, clearly sensing the tension building in the room. Dinner conversation was stilted, filled with the kind of forced pleasantness that happens when everyone is avoiding the topic they actually want to discuss. Derek talked about his business, carefully avoiding any specific details about clients or investments. Maya hung on his every word while shooting me meaningful looks across the table. My parents tried to keep things light with questions about my physical therapy and updates on extended family members. I found myself studying Maya throughout the meal, looking for signs of deception or guilt. She seemed genuinely affectionate toward Derek, laughing at his jokes and touching his arm when she talked. Either she was an excellent actress, or she really believed in him. The possibility that she might be as much a victim of his manipulation as I was supposed to be made everything more complicated. After dinner, while Mom and Dad were cleaning up in the kitchen, Derek cornered me in the living room. "Can we talk privately?" he asked, glancing toward the kitchen to make sure my parents couldn't hear. I followed him out to the back patio, where the desert landscaping my father had installed years ago was wilting in the late afternoon heat. Derek sat down on one of the wrought iron chairs and gestured for me to do the same. "I know you think I'm just some guy trying to take advantage of your situation," he began, "but I genuinely want to help you. Maya talks about you all the time, how hard you've worked, how much you've sacrificed. You deserve to have financial security. I appreciate that, but I'm comfortable with my own financial decisions. Are you, though?" He leaned forward, his expression intense. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're letting fear make your choices for you. You've been through trauma, and now you're so focused on safety that you're missing opportunities that could change your life." There was something almost hypnotic about his voice, a practiced quality that suggested he'd given this speech before. I could see how Maya might have been drawn in by his confidence and apparent expertise. "What exactly are you proposing?" "A partnership. You provide the capital, I provide the expertise and connections. We split the profits 50-50. You'd make more money in the first year than most people see in a lifetime. And if the investments go bad?" "They won't. I have guarantees from my partners." "What partners?" Again, that flicker of something across his face. "Private equity firms. High net worth individuals who prefer to keep their business dealings confidential." "The same people Maya mentioned? The ones you owe money to?" Derek's confident facade cracked slightly. "Maya shouldn't have told you about that. It's a temporary cash flow issue, nothing more." "How temporary? And how much money are we talking about?" He stood up and walked to the edge of the patio, staring out at the desert beyond my parents' backyard. "Look, I made some mistakes last year. Invested in cryptocurrency at the wrong time, leveraged too heavily. But I've learned from those mistakes. This new opportunity is completely different. Derek, I need you to be completely honest with me. How much money do you owe, and what happens if you can't pay it back?" When he turned to face me, I saw genuine fear in his eyes for the first time. $300,000. And these People. They're not the kind you want to keep waiting. What kind are they exactly? The kind who don't care about legal niceties when it comes to collecting debts. So Maya had been telling the truth about that part, at least. Derek was in serious trouble with dangerous people, and my settlement money represented his only way out. I'm sorry you're in this situation, I said carefully, but I can't risk my financial security to solve your problems. It wouldn't be risking anything. The investment opportunity is real, Solenn. Even if you only put in half your settlement, the returns would be enough to pay back my debts and still leave you with more money than you started with. And if it doesn't work out? Then I'm probably a dead man, and you're out some money you never would have had if not for your accident. The casual way he mentioned his own potential death chilled me. Either he was being melodramatic to manipulate my emotions, or he was genuinely terrified of the people he owed money to. I need time to think about it. Time is the one thing I don't have. These people want their money by the end of the month. That's 2 weeks away. Exactly, which is why I need an answer from you tonight. I stood up, suddenly feeling claustrophobic despite being outside. I can't make a decision like this under pressure. Solenn, please, I'm begging you. I know we just met, but Maya loves me and I love her. We want to build a life together, but I can't do that if I'm looking over my shoulder for people who want to hurt me. Have you considered going to the police? Derek laughed bitterly. The police can't help with this kind of debt. These people operate outside the law. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you borrowed money from them. His expression hardened. You know what? Fine. I tried to do this the nice way. Tried to make it beneficial for everyone. But if you won't help me voluntarily, maybe your family can convince you. Something in his tone made my blood run cold. What's that supposed to mean? It means your sister loves you very much, and she'd be devastated if something happened to you because you were too selfish to help the people who care about you. Before I could respond, Maya appeared in the doorway. What are you two talking about out here? Just discussing investment strategies, Derek said smoothly, his threatening tone completely gone. I think I'm making progress convincing your sister to consider our proposal. Maya clapped her hands together. Really? Oh, Solenn, that's wonderful. This is going to be so good for all of us. I looked between Maya and Derek, trying to process what had just happened. Had Derek just threatened me, or was I reading too much into his words? The shift in his demeanor when Maya appeared was so complete that I almost doubted my own perception. I haven't agreed to anything, I said. I told Derek I need time to think. Of course, Maya said. But don't think too long. Good opportunities don't wait forever. The rest of the evening passed in a blur of forced conversation and mounting tension. I left earlier than usual, claiming a headache that wasn't entirely fabricated. As I got into my car, Maya followed me to the driveway. Solenn, wait. She looked around nervously as if checking to make sure no one could overhear us. I need to tell you something about Derek. My heart started racing. Was she finally going to admit the truth about something? He's been getting phone calls, she whispered. Scary calls from people demanding their money. Last night, someone followed us home from dinner. Derek's really scared, and honestly, so am I. Maya, if you're in danger, you should go to the police. We can't. Derek says it would only make things worse. But if we can just get the money to pay them back, everything will be fine. And, you think my settlement money is the solution? It's our only option, Solenn. Please, I'm begging you as your sister. Don't let these people hurt the man I love. I studied her face in the porch light, looking for any sign that she was manipulating. Me or lying, all I saw was genuine fear and desperation. I'll think about it, I said finally. Thank you. That's all I can ask. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was still something she wasn't telling me. The pieces of the puzzle were there, but they weren't fitting together in a way that made complete sense. My phone rang as I pulled into my apartment complex. Detective Torres. Miss Rodriguez, I have some information you need to hear. Can you come to the station tonight? It's almost 9 o'clock. This can't wait until morning. Trust me. 20 minutes later, I was back in the same conference room where I'd been that morning. But this time, Detective Torres wasn't alone. A woman in her 30s with short red hair and a no-nonsense expression sat across from him. This is Detective Sarah Kim from our Financial Crimes Unit, Torres explained. She's been looking into your sister's boyfriend. Detective Kim opened a file folder and spread several documents across the table. Derek Morrison isn't who he claims to be. His real name is Derek Castellanos, and he has a criminal record going back 15 years. Fraud, embezzlement, identity, theft. He's very good at targeting vulnerable women and convincing them to give him access to their money. I stared at the police reports and court documents spread in front of me. Mugshots of Derek from different years, sometimes with different hair colors and styles. A long list of aliases and previous addresses. Maya doesn't know about this? Almost certainly not, Detective Kim said. He's very sophisticated in his approach. He creates an entirely false identity, complete with fake business credentials and references. By the time his victims realize what's happening, he's usually disappeared with their money. What about the people he owes money to? That's where it gets interesting, Torres said. We've been tracking Derek's activities for months as part of a larger investigation into a fraud ring. The dangerous people he claims to owe money to? They don't exist. It's part of his con. He creates urgency and fear to pressure his victims into making quick decisions. The room started spinning. So Maya isn't in danger? Not from debt collectors, Detective Kim said, but she might be in danger from Derek himself if he realizes. His con isn't working. What do you mean? Derek has a history of violence when his scams fall apart. His last girlfriend ended up in the hospital after she discovered his real identity and threatened to go to the police. I felt sick. Maya has no idea what kind of person she's involved with. Which brings us to the other reason we called. You in tonight? Torres said. We found something else in Maya's insurance records. He pulled out another set of documents. Your sister filed a claim for front-end damage to her Lexus 3 days after your accident. She told the insurance company she hit a deer on Highway 17 near Flagstaff. The evidence was right there in black and white. Maya had been on Highway 17 the night of my accident. Her car had sustained front-end damage, and she'd lied to the insurance company about how it happened. She hit me, I whispered. She actually hit me and left me there to die. It looks that way, Torres said gently. But we still need more evidence to build a solid case. Are you willing to help us get it? I thought about Maya begging me to save Derek from dangerous people who didn't exist. I thought about Derek threatening me on the patio while Maya stood just inside the house. I thought about my family pressuring me to give up my settlement money to solve a problem that was built on lies. What do you need me to do? Detective Kim leaned forward. We need you to play along with Derek's con. Agree to invest the money, but insist on meeting with his business partners first. We'll be recording everything. Is that safe? If Derek has a history of violence. We'll have officers positioned nearby at all times. You'll never be in real danger. What about Maya? If she really did hit me and leave me there, she's been lying to me for 3 years. She's been coming to family dinners, visiting me in the hospital, pretending to care about my recovery while knowing she's the one who nearly killed me. People do terrible things when they're scared, Torres said. It's possible that Maya panicked after the accident and has been living with the guilt ever since. Finding out about Derek's real identity might be enough to convince her to tell the truth. Or she might double down on the lies to protect herself. That's a risk we'll have to take. I sat in the quiet conference room, fluorescent lights, humming overhead, trying to process everything I'd learned. My sister had tried to kill me. My family was pressuring me to give money to a career criminal, and I was being asked to put myself in potential danger to help the police catch them. Both. If I do this, I said slowly, what happens to Maya? That depends on what charges the district attorney decides to file. Hit and run, leaving the scene of an accident, insurance fraud. She could be looking at several years in prison. And if I don't do this, Derek will probably disappear with whatever money he can get from Maya, and she'll realize she's been conned. But without solid evidence of the hit and run, your sister will never face consequences for what she did to you. I thought about the past 3 years of my life, the surgeries, the physical therapy, the career I'd lost, the financial struggles I'd endured while Maya lived her perfect life with her perfect boyfriend. She'd sat in my hospital room holding my hand while knowing she was the reason I was there. I'll do it, I said. Are you sure? Once we start this, there's no going back. I'm sure, but I have one condition. What's that? When this is over, I want to be the one to tell Maya that I know what she did. Before you arrest her, before the lawyers get involved, I want her to hear it from me. Detective Torres and Detective Kim exchanged glances. That's not usually how we handle these situations, Kim said. Then this isn't a usual situation. If you want my help, that's my condition. After a long moment, Torres nodded. Okay, but the conversation will have to be recorded, and we'll need to be close enough to intervene if things go wrong. Agreed. I left the police station feeling like I was walking into a war zone. In 48 hours, I'd be wearing a wire and confronting the 2 people who'd been systematically betraying me for years. One had tried to kill me and spent 3 years lying about it. The other was a career criminal who'd threatened me when I wouldn't hand over my life savings. But for the first time since the accident, I felt like I had some control over my own story. Maya and Derek had been writing the narrative, casting themselves as the victims who needed my help, and me as the selfish sister who wouldn't share her good fortune. It was time to write a different ending. Tuesday morning arrived with an unusual, cool breeze that made Phoenix feel almost livable before the sun climbed too high. I stood in my bathroom, staring at my reflection while trying to prepare myself for what was about to happen. In 2 hours, I'd be wearing a recording device and walking into what the police were calling a controlled operation. Nothing about it felt controlled to me. Detective Kim had explained the equipment the night before. A tiny microphone would be taped to my chest, hidden beneath my clothes, with a transmitter no bigger than a credit card tucked into my purse. 2 unmarked police cars would be positioned within a block of wherever Derek wanted to meet, and I'd have a panic word that would bring them running if things went wrong. My phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Maya. Derek is so excited you changed your mind. He wants to meet at Kierland Commons at 2 p.m. Coffee shop on the main level. Can't wait to celebrate becoming business partners. I typed back that I'd be there, then immediately called Detective Torres. Public location, lots of witnesses, he said after I read him the message. That's good. Derek's smart enough to know he needs to keep things looking legitimate. What if he suspects something? Just stick to the story we rehearsed. You've been thinking about his proposal. You realize he's right about the investment opportunity, but you want to meet his business partners before you commit any money. And if he says his partners aren't available, then you walk away. Don't let him pressure you into anything beyond what we've planned. At 1:30, I parked at Kierland Commons and walked slowly through the outdoor shopping center, trying to appear casual while scanning for the police officers I knew were watching. The coffee shop was busy with the lunch crowd, filled with business people and shoppers taking a break from the Arizona heat. Maya and Derek were already seated at a corner table, both dressed like they were heading to an important business meeting. Maya wore a navy blazer over a white blouse, looking more professional than I'd ever seen her. Derek had on a charcoal suit with a blue tie, every inch the successful financial advisor he was pretending to be. Solenn! Maya jumped up to hug me, her excitement genuine and almost heartbreaking. I'm so proud of you for taking this step. This is going to change everything for all of us. Derek stood and shook my hand with his practiced firm grip. I have to admit, I'm a little surprised you reconsidered. What changed your mind? This was the moment I'd been dreading, looking my sister in the eye while knowing she'd tried to kill me, sitting across from a man who'd threatened me while pretending everything was normal. I realized you were right about fear making my decisions for me, I said, the words feeling like ash in my mouth. The accident changed how I think about risk, but maybe it's time to stop letting trauma control my choices. Maya reached across the table and squeezed my hand. That's so mature, Solenn. I know this wasn't easy for you. It wasn't. But I trust your judgment, Maya. If you believe in Derek and this opportunity, then I want to be part of it. Derek pulled out a leather portfolio and opened it on the table. I've prepared all the documentation you'll need to review. Investment, projections, partner testimonials, profit-sharing agreements, everything is completely transparent. I looked at the professionally printed documents, knowing they were probably as fake as Derek's identity. This all looks impressive, but I'd like to meet with your business partners before I commit to anything. Something flickered across Derek's face, the same expression I'd noticed when he was deflecting my questions at Sunday dinner. That's not really how these partnerships work. My investors prefer to maintain their privacy. I understand that, but I'm talking about investing $300,000. I need to feel confident about who I'm doing business with. The documentation should give you all the confidence you need. Look at these return projections. Look at the testimonials from satisfied clients. Maya leaned forward eagerly. Derek showed me everything last week. The numbers are incredible, Solenn. Some of his clients have tripled their investments in just 18 months. I'm sure they have, I said carefully. But I still want to meet the partners. Derek's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I'm afraid that's not possible. These individuals value their privacy above everything else. They won't meet with potential investors until after the initial commitment is made. Then I guess we don't have a deal. Solenn, wait. Maya's voice had a note of panic. Don't walk away from this over something so small. Derek's reputation speaks for itself. What reputation exactly? I've tried to research his firm online, but I can't find much information. Derek smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. We maintain a low profile by design. High net worth clients prefer discretion. Too much online presence attracts the wrong kind of attention. From who? Competitors. Regulatory agencies who don't understand our business model. The usual bureaucratic interference that plagues successful private investment firms. I'd heard enough rehearsed answers. Time to push harder. Derek, I need you to be completely honest with me. Yesterday you mentioned owing money to dangerous people. Today you're talking about satisfied clients and guaranteed returns. Which version is the truth? Maya looked confused. What dangerous people? Derek, what is she talking about? Derek shot me a warning look before turning to Maya with his most reassuring smile. It's nothing serious, honey. Just some cash flow issues with a previous investment. Nothing that affects this opportunity. You told me these people might hurt you if you couldn't pay them back. Solenn, Maya's voice was sharp. Why are you being so negative about this? Derek is trying to help you. Is he? Or is he trying to help himself? Derek stood up abruptly. I think we should continue this conversation somewhere more private. Maya, why don't you and Solenn come back to my office? I can show you more detailed financial projections there. Every instinct I had was screaming danger. A private location meant fewer witnesses and less protection from the officers who were supposed to be watching. I'm comfortable discussing this here, I said. Some of the information I need to share is confidential. Client privacy, You understand. Then maybe this isn't the right investment for me. Derek's mask of professional courtesy finally slipped. You know what, Solenn? I'm starting to think Maya was wrong about you. She said you were smart and responsible, but all I see is someone who's paranoid and suspicious. Derek! Maya looked shocked. Don't talk to my sister like that. Your sister is sabotaging an opportunity that could set all of us up for life. And frankly, I'm wondering if she really wants what's best for you. What's that supposed to mean? Think about it, Maya. Solenn gets almost $1 million in settlement. Money, and suddenly she's too good to help her own family. She'd rather keep it all for herself than share the wealth. I watched Maya's face as Derek spoke, seeing the doubt creep into her expression. He was good at this, turning my reasonable questions into character flaws, making my caution look like selfishness. That's not fair, Maya said, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Your sister has more money than she could spend in 10 years, but she won't invest even a fraction of it to help secure your future together. What does that tell you about her priorities? It tells me I'm smart enough not to hand over my life savings to someone I barely know, I said. Derek leaned forward, his voice low and dangerous. Someone you barely know? I'm the man your sister loves, the man she wants to marry. If that doesn't make me family, then maybe you don't understand what family means. I understand exactly what family means. Family doesn't threaten each other when they don't get what they want. Threaten? Maya looked between us, confused. What threats? Derek, what is she talking about? Derek straightened his tie and forced his professional smile back into place. Your sister has been misinterpreting our conversations. I've never threatened anyone. You told me that if I didn't help you, my family might convince me that I should. You said Maya would be devastated if something happened to me because I was too selfish to help. I said no such thing. Yes, you did. On my parents' patio. Sunday night. Maya stared at Derek. Is that true? Of course not. Your sister is obviously confused. Maybe the head injury from her accident was more serious than anyone realized. The casual cruelty of using my brain trauma against me was breathtaking, but it also told me everything I needed to know about Derek's character. There's nothing wrong with my memory, I said, and there's nothing wrong with my judgment. This whole investment opportunity is a scam. Derek's composure finally cracked completely. You ungrateful bitch. Do you have any idea what you're throwing away? Derek! Maya gasped. Your sister is ruining everything, Maya. Everything we've worked for, everything we've planned. And for what? Because she's too paranoid to trust the people who love her. The people who love her don't try to steal her money, I said. Steal? I'm trying to help her multiply her money. But apparently she'd rather live like a victim for the rest of her life than take a chance on something bigger. Maya looked like she was watching a stranger. Derek, I've never seen you like this. Because I've never had to deal with someone so determined to destroy our future together. Our future shouldn't depend on my sister's money. Derek realized he'd gone too far. I could see him trying to regroup, to find his way back to the charming persona that had fooled Maya for months. You're right, honey. I'm sorry. I'm just frustrated because I know how much this opportunity could mean for all of us. But if Solenn doesn't want to be part of it, that's her choice. Yes, it is, I said, and my choice is to walk away. I stood up and Derek grabbed my wrist. Sit down. We're not finished here. Let go of me. Derek, what are you doing? Maya's voice was high with alarm. Your sister is making a mistake that she's going to regret for the rest of her life. Let go of her right now. Derek released my wrist but remained standing, his face flushed with anger. Fine. Walk away. But don't come crying to us when you're old and broke and realize you threw away the chance of a lifetime. I'll take my chances. I grabbed my purse and headed for the exit, my heart pounding. Behind me, I could hear Maya and Derek arguing in sharp whispers, but I didn't look back. I made it halfway across the shopping center before Maya caught up with me. "Solenn, wait!" I turned to see her running after me, tears streaming down her face. "I'm so sorry," she said when she reached me. "I don't know what got into Derek. He's never acted like that before." "Maya, you need to listen to me very carefully. Derek is not who you think he is." "What do you mean?" I looked around, making sure Derek hadn't followed us. "His real name isn't Derek Morrison. He's a career criminal who targets women like you, women with access to money or family members with money." "That's ridiculous. I've seen his business license, his client references. They're fake. The police have been investigating him for months." Maya stared at me like I'd lost my mind. "The police? Solenn, what have you done?" "I've been trying to protect you. By investigating the man I love behind my back, by making up stories about him being a criminal. I'm not making anything up. His real name is Derek Castellanos, and he has a criminal record going back 15 years. Fraud, embezzlement, identity theft. I don't believe you. Maya, think about how little you actually know about him. Has he ever taken you to his office? Have you met any of his clients or business partners? Has he introduced you to his family or friends from before you met?" I could see doubt creeping into her expression as she thought about my questions. "He's a private person," she said weakly. "He's a con artist. And the dangerous people he claims to owe money to? They don't exist. It's all part of his scam to create urgency and get you to pressure me into giving him my settlement money." Maya shook her head. "This is insane. Why would the police be investigating Derek? What did you tell them?" This was the moment I'd been dreading. Time to tell her about the accident. "Maya, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the truth." "What?" "Where were you on the night of October 15th, 3 years ago?" The color drained from her face. "Why are you asking me that?" "Because that's the night I was hit by a car and left for dead on Highway 17. And I think you know more about that accident than you've ever told me." "Solenn, I don't know what you're implying, but you were in Flagstaff that weekend with Derek. You posted pictures on Instagram of the two of you at bars in the area. And 3 days after my accident, you filed an insurance claim for front-end damage to your Lexus." Maya's face went completely white. "How do you know about my insurance claim?" "Because the police found it when they were investigating Derek." "Maya, did you hit me that night?" For a long moment, we stared at each other in the middle of the shopping center, surrounded by people going about their normal lives while my world fell apart. "I didn't mean to," she whispered. The words hit me like a physical blow. Even though I'd suspected it, even though the evidence had been building for days, hearing her admit it was devastating. "You didn't mean to hit me, or you didn't mean to leave me there." "Both. Neither." "I don't know." Tears were streaming down her face now. "It was raining, and I'd been drinking. Derek was following behind me in his car, and when I came around that curve, I saw headlights. And then there was this impact, and I knew I'd hit something. Someone. You hit someone." I stopped. I got out of the car and saw... She couldn't finish the sentence. "You saw me lying there bleeding. I didn't know it was you at first. It was dark and raining, and you were unconscious. But then, I saw your face and I panicked. So you left me there to die. I was going to call 911, but Derek caught up to me and said we had to leave. He said if I got arrested for drunk driving and hit and run, it would ruin my life. He said someone else would find you and call for help." "And you believed him?" "I was scared and drunk and not thinking clearly. Derek said he'd take care of everything, that he'd make an anonymous call to report the accident once we got away from there." "Did he?" Maya looked away. I don't know. I was so messed up that night I could barely think straight. The next morning, Derek told me he'd taken care of it, that help had arrived and you were going to be okay. I spent 3 days in a coma. Maya, I nearly died. I know. I was so terrified when Mom called to tell me you'd been in an accident. I wanted to confess right then, but Derek said it was too late, that admitting what happened would only make things worse for everyone. So you decided to lie for 3 years instead. I wanted to tell you so many times. Every time I visited you in the hospital, every time I saw you struggling with physical therapy, every time you talked about the hit and run driver. The guilt was eating me alive. But not enough to tell. The truth. Derek said if I confessed, I'd go to prison, and it wouldn't change what happened to you. He said the best thing I could do was be there for you during your recovery, while secretly hoping I'd never remember who hit me. I prayed every night that your memory would come back, that you'd remember and forgive me. You prayed that I'd remember you nearly killing me and then forgive you for lying about it for 3 years? I know how it sounds, but I never stopped loving you, Solenn. You're my sister. Your sister who you left bleeding on the side of the road. Maya broke down completely, sobbing in the middle of the shopping center while other people stared. I felt like I was watching everything, from a distance, like this conversation was happening to someone else. I'm so sorry, she said through her tears. I've been living with this guilt every day for 3 years. I wanted to tell you, but I was so scared. Scared of going to prison or scared of losing Derek? Both. I love him, Solenn. Even if everything you're saying about him is true, I still love him. He's been manipulating you, Maya, just like he's been manipulating me. The Derek you fell in love with doesn't exist. How can you be so sure? Because I've seen his police file. Because I know about his previous victims. Because I watched him threaten me and then lie about it 5 minutes later. Maya wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What happens now? Now you have to decide who you really are. Are you someone who can live with herself after nearly killing her sister and lying about it for 3 years? Or are you someone who's ready to tell the truth and face the consequences? What if I can't handle the consequences? Then you're not the person I thought you were. She looked at me with red, swollen eyes. Are you going to turn me in? I don't have to. The police already know. They've been building a case against both you and Derek. Both of us? Derek for fraud and threats. You for hit and run, leaving the scene of an accident, and insurance fraud. Maya seemed to crumple in on herself. My life is over. Your life as you've been living it is over. But that doesn't mean you can't build something better from the truth. How can anything be better? I'm going to prison. I'll lose my job, my apartment, everything. You might go to prison, but for the first time in 3 years, you'll be free from the lies. We stood there in silence for a moment, 2 sisters, who'd been destroyed by one terrible night and 3 years of deception. I need to find Derek, Maya said finally. I need to hear his side of the story. Maya, don't. The police are going to arrest him. If you're with him when that happens, it'll only make things worse for you. I have to know if what you're saying about him is true. You already know it's true. You saw how he acted in there. That's who he really is. But she was already walking away, back toward the coffee shop where Derek was probably planning his next move. I watched her go, knowing it might be the last time I saw my sister as a free person. My phone buzzed. A text from Detective Torres. We got everything. Time to bring them both in. I looked around the shopping center, suddenly aware that this normal Tuesday afternoon had been the culmination of 3 years of lies and manipulation. In a few minutes, police officers would be arresting the 2 people who'd betrayed me most deeply. I should have felt satisfied. Justice was finally being served. The truth was finally coming out. Instead, I just felt empty. The sister I'd grown up loving had tried to kill me and spent 3 years lying about it. The settlement money that was supposed to give me security had become a target for criminals and manipulators. The family I'd always trusted had pressured me to give up my future to solve problems that were built on deception. But as I walked back to my car, I realized something else. For the first time since the accident, I was in control of my own story. Maya and Derek had been writing the narrative, casting me as either a victim who needed their help or a selfish person who wouldn't share her good fortune. Now I was writing the ending, and it was going to be very different from what they expected. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my new house, sunlight streaming through windows that actually belonged to me. The settlement money had bought me a modest 3-bedroom home in a quiet neighborhood where children played in the streets and neighbors waved when they saw you getting your mail. It wasn't the mansion Maya had probably imagined I'd buy, but it was mine, and it was paid for, and nobody could take it away from me. The trial had ended 3 weeks ago. Derek received 12 years for fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy. His real name turned out to be Derek Castellanos, just as Detective Kim had told me, and I wasn't his first victim. 2 other women had come forward during the investigation, sharing stories remarkably similar to what Maya had experienced. One had lost her entire inheritance to his investment schemes. Another had mortgaged her house to fund what she believed was a legitimate business opportunity. Maya received 18 months, with the possibility of parole in 12 if she completed a victim impact program and community service. The judge had been surprisingly lenient, taking into account her cooperation with the prosecution and the fact that Derek had clearly manipulated her psychological state. She'd pleaded guilty to all charges, leaving the scene of an accident, filing a false insurance claim, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The last time I saw her was at Derek's sentencing hearing. She sat in the gallery wearing a simple black dress, her hair pulled back in a ponytail that made her look younger than her 28 years. When our eyes met across the courtroom, she mouthed, "I'm sorry," and I nodded back. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it wasn't hatred either. It was acknowledgement that we'd both survived something that had changed us forever. My parents had taken Maya's arrest hard. Mom spent weeks insisting there had been some mistake, that Maya would never lie about something so serious. Dad retreated into silent anger, unable to process that his youngest daughter had nearly killed his oldest, and then covered it up for 3 years. They'd tried to visit me several times during the investigation, bringing casseroles and offers to help with anything I needed, but every conversation felt stilted and artificial. The family dinners had stopped completely. There was too much truth in the air now, too many uncomfortable questions about what they'd known and when they'd known it. Mom had admitted that she'd suspected Maya was hiding something about the night of my accident, but had chosen not to ask difficult questions. Dad confessed that he'd noticed the damage to Maya's car, but had accepted her story about hitting a deer without question, because it was easier than considering alternatives. The hardest part wasn't the betrayal itself, but realizing how long I'd been living in a house built on lies. Every family gathering where Maya had pretended to care about my recovery. Every conversation where she'd expressed outrage about the hit-and-run driver who was never caught. Every moment when she'd acted like the supportive sister while knowing she was the reason I was struggling to rebuild my life. But the surprising thing was how liberating the truth had become. For 3 years, I'd carried guilt about the accident, wondering what I could have done differently, questioning whether I'd been driving safely enough, worrying that somehow I'd contributed to my own injury, learning that Maya had been drunk and reckless, that the accident was entirely her fault, had lifted a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying. The settlement money was still mostly intact. After buying the house and setting aside funds for ongoing medical expenses, I had enough left to live comfortably for several years while I figured out what came next. The social work career that had been derailed by my brain injury was probably gone forever, but I'd started volunteering with a victims advocacy group, helping other people navigate the legal system after traumatic experiences. Detective Torres had recommended me for the position. He'd stayed in touch throughout the trial, checking on my safety and keeping me informed about the investigation's progress. He told me I had a natural ability to help people through difficult situations, probably because I'd been through so many myself. On this particular morning, I was expecting a visitor. Rachel, my friend whose birthday party I'd been leaving the night of the accident, was driving down from Flagstaff to see my new house. We'd reconnected during the trial preparation when the prosecutors needed witness statements about my activities that night. She'd felt guilty for years, wondering if she should have insisted I stay overnight instead of driving home in the rain. The doorbell rang at exactly 10 o'clock. Rachel always was punctual. Solenn. She stood on my front porch holding a bottle of champagne and a box that smelled like chocolate. "This place is perfect." I gave her a tour of the house, showing off the hardwood floors I'd chosen, the kitchen where I was slowly learning to cook actual meals, the spare bedroom that was gradually becoming an office where I worked on victim advocacy cases. Rachel made appropriately impressed noises and asked thoughtful questions about my plans for the backyard. "You seem different," she said, as we settled on the back patio, with coffee and the chocolate croissants she'd brought. Lighter somehow. "I feel different. It's strange how much energy it takes to live with lies, even when you don't know they're lies." "Have you heard from Maya at all?" "A few letters. She's in a minimum security facility about 2 hours north of here. She writes about the classes she's taking, the other women she's met, how sorry she is for everything. I haven't written back yet." "Are you planning to?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to maintain contact because she's still my sister. But part of me thinks a clean break might be healthier for both of us." Rachel nodded thoughtfully. "What about Derek? Any word on him?" "He's in federal prison in Colorado. Apparently he's been trying to run investment scams from his cell using other inmates' family members as intermediaries. Some people never learn." We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching a family of quail pick their way across my desert landscaping. The Arizona heat was already building, but the covered patio provided enough shade to make the morning pleasant. "Can I ask you something?" Rachel said. "Do you ever regret pursuing the truth? I mean, your family might still be intact if you'd never found out what really happened that night." I'd thought about this question many times over the past few months. Would it have been better to live with the lies? To let Maya and Derek take my settlement money and pretend everything was fine? To maintain family relationships built on deception, rather than face the painful reality of what had actually happened? "No," I said finally. "I don't regret it. The family I thought I had was built on lies anyway. Maya sitting in my hospital room pretending to care while knowing she was the reason I was there. My parents pressuring me to give money to a criminal because they couldn't face asking hard questions about their daughter's behavior. Derek threatening me and then denying it happened. None of that was real. But it must be lonely. Sometimes. But it's honest lonely, not fake togetherness. I'd rather be alone with the truth than surrounded by people who are lying to me." "What about forgiveness? Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Maya?" "I think forgiveness is more complicated than people make it out to be." Maya made a terrible mistake that night, but the real betrayal was the 3 years of lies that followed. Every day she chose not to tell me the truth was another day she chose her own comfort over my right to know what happened to me. And Derek? Derek is a predator who saw an opportunity and took it. I don't forgive predators for being predators. That's just what they are. Rachel stayed for lunch, and we spent the afternoon reminiscing about college and catching up on mutual friends who'd scattered across the country after graduation. It felt good to have a conversation that wasn't about accidents or trials or family drama. Just two friends talking about normal life things in a house that felt like home. After she left, I walked through my quiet house, appreciating the peace that came with knowing all my secrets. There were no hidden recordings, no false identities, no dangerous debts or mysterious business partners. Just me and the life I was building, one decision at a time. My phone rang as I was preparing dinner. An unknown number with a local area code. Miss Rodriguez, this is Sarah Chen from the Maricopa County Victim Services Office. I hope I'm not disturbing you. Not at all. How can I help you? We have a situation that's somewhat similar to what you experienced, and Detective Torres suggested you might be willing to speak with the victim. A young woman whose sister was involved in covering up a crime that hurt her. She's having trouble deciding whether to cooperate with the prosecution. What kind of crime? Financial fraud. The sister helped her boyfriend steal money from their grandmother's estate. The victim is the primary heir, but she's torn between seeking justice and protecting her family relationships. I thought about Maya's letters, full of remorse and promises to make amends. I thought about my parents, who still called occasionally, but couldn't quite figure out how to have a relationship with me that acknowledged what had really happened. I thought about the empty chair at holiday tables and the conversations that would never happen again. I'd be happy to talk with her, I said. Thank you. I think your perspective could be really valuable. Sometimes people need to hear from someone who's been through something similar. After I hung up, I realized this was what I wanted to do with my life. Help other people navigate the impossible choices that come with family betrayal and institutional corruption. Help them understand that choosing truth over comfort is hard but ultimately liberating. That evening, I sat on my back patio watching the sunset paint the desert mountains in shades of orange and purple. The settlement money had given me financial security, but the truth had given me something more valuable: the right to write my own story instead of living in someone else's fiction. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it without reading, assuming it was spam, but something made me open it. Solenn, this is Maya. They let us have supervised phone access once a week, but texting is easier. I don't expect you to respond, but I wanted you to know that I think about you every day. Not because I feel guilty, though I do, but because I'm finally becoming the person I should have been all along. I'm learning to tell the truth even when it's hard. I know it's too late for us, but I wanted you to know that what you did changed me. Thank you for being braver than I was. Your sister always, Maya. I stared at the message for a long time, feeling a complicated mix of emotions I couldn't quite name. Not forgiveness exactly, but something like recognition. Maya was finally taking responsibility for her choices, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. I didn't respond to the text, but I didn't delete it either. Maybe someday I'd be ready for that conversation. Maybe someday we'd figure out how to be sisters again, built on truth instead of lies. But that day wasn't today, and that was okay. 2. The settlement money was supposed to compensate me for what I'd lost in the accident. My career, my physical abilities, my sense of safety in the world. But it had become something else entirely. It had become the bait that revealed who my family really was underneath all the love and loyalty we'd claimed to share. In a strange way, I was grateful for that revelation. Better to know the truth about people's character than to live in comfortable illusions. Better to build new relationships on solid ground than to maintain old ones built on sand. The desert. Air was cooling as darkness fell, and I could hear coyotes calling to each other from the mountains beyond the city. Wild sounds for a wild place, honest in their hunger and their loneliness. I raised my coffee cup in a small toast to them, to honesty, to the kind of truth that sets you free even when it hurts. Tomorrow I'd call Sarah Chen back and schedule a meeting with the young woman who was struggling with family betrayal. I'd share my story and help her understand that sometimes the people we love most are capable of hurting us the deepest. But I'd also tell her that surviving betrayal doesn't make you bitter if you don't let it. It makes you careful and wise, and grateful for the people who choose truth over comfort. The settlement money had bought me a house, but the truth had bought me a life. And for the first time since that rainy night 3 years ago, I was genuinely excited to see what I'd build with it. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.